Welcome to everyone to our New Year's Eve program, and we start with the evening chanting in Pali on page 18, collection of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, page 18. Yoso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Svakato Yena Bhagavata Dhamma Sopatipanno Yassa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Dhammayang Bhagavantang Sadhammang Sasanghang Imehi Sakari Hiyatarahang Arupitehi Abhipujayama Sadhu no pante bhagava suchira parini putopi pachima janata nukampa manasa ime sakari dukatapanna karapute patikanhatu Amhakang dikaratang hitaya sukhaya Arahang samma sambuddho bhagava Buddhang bhagavantang abhivadimi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Handamayang Buddhassa Bhagavato Pubapaka Namakarang Karomase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Handamayang Buddha no satinayang karomase Tangko pana bhagavantang evam kalyano kitisado abhogato Iddhipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho
Vichacharana sampanno sugato lokavido anuttaro purisa dhammasarati sattha divamanusanang buddho bhagavati Handamayang dhammanusatinayang karomase Svakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko iddhipassiko opanaiko pachatang viditabo vinyuhiti Handamayang sanghanusatinayang karomase Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Uchupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samicipatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yatidang chattari purisa yukani atta purisa pokala Isa bhagavato savaka sangho Ahuneyo, Pahuneyo, Dakineyo, Anjalikaraniyo, Anuttarang Punyaketang Lokasati.
We continue on page 37 with the Buddha's words on loving kindness. Now let us chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded,
freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Now let us chant the reflection on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with gladness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with gladness. Abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will.
Yeah, we continue with the taking of the refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and the 5 precepts. Yeah, it's in a way very meaningful way to start the new year. Yeah, basically, by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and the 5 precepts, we give our life a certain aim or direction. And so having the Buddha as a teacher and supreme guide, and having conviction in his awakening, and in the Dhamma, his teaching, the way of practice that he taught, having this conviction that this method or this way of practice will lead to complete liberation, and that we align our life according to these principles that the Buddha taught, having this aim or this direction in life for the new year. And then the Sangha, having the refuge, taking refuge in the Sangha, we see the Noble Sangha as example of how we can develop our conduct by body, speech and mind, how we can develop, and we follow the example and align our actions according to how they practiced, gradually following the example. Then with taking the 5 precepts, by doing that we protect ourselves, in the sense that we protect ourselves from engaging in unwholesome actions that cause regret, and also in terms of unwholesome karma, it would be for our own harm. And then we also, the 5 precepts, we could say the precepts are like a training to undertake. So you train yourself to keep these 5 precepts, to abstain from intentionally killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from lying, and from taking intoxicants. And by keeping these 5 precepts, basically you create a barrier, and the defilements of the mind cannot expand anymore beyond this barrier. So basically protecting the mind from the expansion of defilements, and from, also the Buddha says, for example, with regard to the precepts for the monks, but this is the same for the 5 precepts, for basically for the restraint of taints in this life and also in the future lives. So basically the tendencies of defilements that would otherwise expand, there are limits to them, and they cannot go beyond this despair anymore as long as one keeps these 5 precepts. So this is the benefit or the protection for oneself, and then also the protection for others, that by abstaining from, let's say, killing living beings, harming living beings, and the other precepts gives countless beings freedom from affliction and fear and hostility. And so we're having this, in a way, also this boundless quality of whatever beings there are, we don't harm them in this way or cause any damage in this way. And so also that's, the Buddha says, also this has that great results one will experience oneself as karmic result, immeasurable freedom from affliction and fear. And so, yeah, this is an important function of the precepts in the sense of protection for oneself and for others. Yeah, so by aligning, taking refuge in the Triple Gem as our guide, this is a great sort of influence on how our actions and our whole being develops, like our mind or heart, or what kind of being we become. The Buddha talks sometimes about becoming. So then, that if we align our actions to these principles of the Buddha taught and the precepts, then that we become a different being by developing our own actions and our mind. Yeah, so the Buddha says that in one sutta in the Guttara Nikaya, that, for example, taking refuge and the 5 precepts, there's greater karmic results. For example, than offering food to 100 arahants or to 100 Pacheka Buddhas, or to offering a whole monastery, because it's a different a scale of committing oneself or giving one's life a different aim than just, for example, a simple act of generosity that one once does. And the more we align our actions according to the principles of the Dhamma, that the further we progress on the path. And so it's a very, very important thing. And yeah, so it's basically we could say the direction for the new year. Then that we take this teaching and the Dhamma and the Buddha as our guide, and then align our life according to that principles. Okay, anyone brave enough to request the precepts? Stefan? Okay, good.
Please repeat after me. Mayam Bante Tisaranena Saha Ancha Sila Nicha Yachama Tutiyampi Mayam Bante Tisaranena Saha Ancha Sila Nicha Yachama Tatiyampi Mayam Bante Tisaranena Saha Ancha Sila Nicha Yachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tisarana gamanang nittitang. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kami somichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Swaramira macha pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nimbuting yanti tasma silang visodai. Okay, we can do a short meditation for about 15-20 minutes. So, how can we succeed in following or realizing our Dhamma aspirations or aspirations to practice and realize the Dhamma? And one way of looking at it is by practicing the 4 Iddhipadas, the 4 bases of power, sometimes translated or sometimes as 4 bases for success. I think in Pasatai Iddhipadasi, maybe, do you know? Sure. Do you know the Iddhipadasi? Iddhipadasi? Exactly, yeah, this one's okay. Yeah. Was just trying whether you can understand my Thai. See, this is just interesting. Yeah, good, good. Yes. So, yeah, these are 4 qualities that are useful for general success, or if you have a project or to achieve something, but also for Dhamma practice. We had in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, before the Buddha announces his final Nibbana in 3 months, then he tells the monks they should remember and practice his teaching and these most important teaching categories that he taught them to practice. And so some of them are very known and much talked about, like the 4 Satipatthanas, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, or the Noble Eightfold Path. And some are almost never talked about in the West, like the 4 Iddhipadas, the 4 bases of power. And I think maybe there are already Buddhist books in the West since more than 150 years, but I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 books about the 4 Iddhipadas, interestingly, even though it was one of the main teaching categories of the Buddha. while in Thailand, for example, they are more often talked about. Say, for example, if you can study as monk, you can study these Dhamma exams, and then Naktam Tri, Naktam To, Naktam Ek, and then you can study, and then Naktam Tri, the easiest one, they ask you, how can you succeed in your studies? And then you write these 4 qualities as answer. This is the stock answer that you have to memorize, and then you write down this answer. So I didn't do the exam, but just from what I heard. Yes, these 4 qualities, they are chanda, sometimes translated as desire, but you can also call it like motivation, for example, motivation or wanting to do something. Or aspiration, maybe as well. You have an aspiration. Desire is usually a very negative connotation for Buddhists, so maybe some other words are also then give a wider range. And then virya, the energy or effort. Third one is citta. Usually citta means mind or heart, but in this case it means, you could say, being intent on what you're doing or to put your heart into something. And then the 4th one, vimamsa, is investigation or trying out different things. Yeah, and so one can, as I said, these 4 qualities are generally successful, generally useful for any endeavor that you want to undertake. Like, say, for example, you study something, and whatever at university you study medicine or economics or whatever, and then you need these 4 qualities to succeed in your studies. And so you need this, basically this desire or motivation or aspiration, like wanting to do this study. And why it is worthwhile to do that. That's the first one, the chanda. And then you need to put forth the energy and the efforts to learn the material for the studies and the practice in practical sessions. And then while you're studying, you need to be sort of intent on what you're doing and put your heart into it. And you have to investigate which areas did you learn well already, which ones not so well maybe, and how can you improve your knowledge and skill even more. And so similar, let's say if you want to learn, play some music instrument, it's similar, and then you have to have this motivation or this interest to do it and put forth the energy and also investigate how can you improve your skill. And so you will find that if the people who have developed skill to a very high level, like if you are world-class neurosurgeon or top athlete or scientists or musicians or craftsmen, then these people have mastered the skills by developing these 4 qualities or using these 4 qualities to master their skill. And one notices usually, let's say if someone is a great scientist or a great athlete, then they're really like enthusiastic and have this motivation about this skill or their field of knowledge. And they're very like motivated, and they put in all this energy and put their heart into it, and that interested to, let's say if you're an athlete, then how can you train more efficiently and what are your weaknesses and so on. And yeah, we can notice that you have these 4 general qualities. So yeah, one can use these 4 qualities as, say, for worldly aims. They're basically for, say, study or gaining knowledge or skill. But the Buddha obviously talks about them regarding developing samadhi, meditation, or in Dhamma practice in general. And so yeah, the Pali word chanda, the first one, as I said, desire, motivation, wanting to do something, or aspiration. Because this Pali word chanda is sometimes used as for defilements. For example, kama chanda is sense desire. So basically wanting to experience pleasant sense objects, then it would be sort of a form of defilement. So sometimes this chanda can be a defilement. But in some other forms of chanda can be part of the path to awakening. So for example, in right effort, someone arouses the chanda, the desire for wholesome qualities, for good qualities to arise. And this is a good desire or a good intention, or to develop these qualities further, having this desire or this motivation, wanting to do that. It's also obviously a good desire, or similar to keep precepts. And one has to, for example, one has to want to keep precepts, otherwise usually one doesn't keep them. So there has to be some motivation there, some desire, if you want to call it like this. Or let's say to have a regular meditation practice, you also need this aspiration or motivation to do it. Otherwise it just fades out. So it's in a way also, I think it's also useful to have be clear that one actually wants to meditate for some purpose. For example, that one wants to experience some calm or peace at least, or wants to practice meditation to realize the Dhamma. And sometimes some meditation teachers, then they have the attitude of not to have any expectations for your meditation practice. But I think at the end, that if you're honest with yourself, you have some expectation, otherwise you wouldn't do it. And so it's actually good, to be clear about why you are motivated to do that, because then this motivation can get even stronger and be developed. So what develops this chanda, this motivation or aspiration, wanting to do something, and it's mainly having a goal, and then why is it worthwhile to pursue it? Or you could also say, instead of goal, like, in which direction do you want your life to develop? So one notices, I think, in general situations you probably can observe that as well, that if someone is like lazy or despondent or depressed, it's often because one doesn't have a goal. Like, you don't have anything worthwhile to live for, something inspiring or uplifting, where you can be enthusiastic and motivated to do it. Well, and that's that if you have a goal or some direction in your life, what would be worthwhile to do, then it brings forth energy. And yeah, it's another simple example. If we, let's say, usually on a Sunday, then people just sleep long because it's just sort of pleasant and there's nothing special to do, and then one just sort of sleeps long. And then because there's nothing special to do, and I don't have any sort of much motivation. But then let's say, for example, sort of half asleep and you see there's a poisonous snake in your room, then you would be very motivated to get up and get out of the room, because you have a very clear goal, a very clear aim that you actually want to get out of the situation. Or similar, if you imagine you would have opportunity to meet the Buddha on alms round very early, then you would also be very motivated to get up, for example. Similar like Anathapindika, when he has this opportunity to meet the Buddha, then he wakes up already 3 times thinking it's already maybe dawn. And in this way, to motivate is also how the Buddha himself is teaching, basically. He tries to arouse your chanda, your desire or your motivation, your aspiration, and he does that by inducing sangvega and pasada, in Pali they're called. So, on the one hand, sangvega, a sense of urgency or being stirred up, and on the other hand, pasada, a sense of confidence or inspiration. And this is why the Buddha talks about old age, sickness and death and dukkha, because he wants to motivate you to practice to escape it. This is this strategy, you could say. This is why he points it out. And similar with all the various results or benefits of good actions and of the Dhamma practice that you can realize. The reason why he points it out is then to give rise to this confidence or inspiration, and then to chanda. And this motivation, aspiration can be more on more like global, larger level, or more like smaller scale. And what I mean with that, say on a global or like larger level, maybe you have the aspiration to realize stream entry in this life. It would be like one, for example, of larger aspiration. Then on a sort of medium scale, for example, having this motivation to meditate regularly at home, or come to the monastery to practice. And also for that you need obviously this motivation. And this is also how these 4 qualities work together. That, for example, let's say you have this, let's say you have the aspiration or the chanda to meditate half an hour every day, and then based on this motivation that you put forth effort and you put your heart into it and you investigate how do you meditate and what is the result of it. And so this is how these 4 qualities, you could say, develop from each other. And then, let's say on a smaller scale, for example, the desire or the intention to stay with the meditation object. So, for example, this motivation to stay with the breath continuously, or being interested to stay with the meditation object. with regard to this, it's also important to focus this like motivation or the desire mostly on the present causes. Otherwise, it becomes like a wishful thinking. That, for example, if you just by thinking you want to attain deep samadhi or stream entry, it will not lead to this realization. But only if you direct your mind to the causes, for example, to staying with the meditation object, to develop virtue, and so on. If you direct your mind to these causes, then as a result, the result will come. The second one, the virya, putting forth the energy to develop wholesome states and to abandon unwholesome states. The third one, the citta, as I said, one can translate it as being intent on what you're doing. For example, you are learning something for an exam, and then at the same time you're watching TV, for example, then obviously you're not really intent on what you're doing, but then otherwise, and you actually, if you develop this quality, then so if you just actually stay with what you're doing and, as I said, putting your heart into it. I think it also has this, the quality of chanda, the desire or motivation is more a short-lived intention, while the citta is more like a long-term inclination of the heart, you could say. So yeah, maybe you notice this in yourself. You have some interest, or you want to learn something, and then maybe after half a year, so it fades away, and then you're interested in something else, and you try out something else. And so it goes from one thing to another, or one hobby and another hobby, and so on. Rather than staying with one thing and mastering really this one skill or this one ability. Or maybe you know some friends or some relatives, and they study something, study for 1 year, one subject, and then they think, oh, maybe I study something else, and then they start something else, and then, okay, maybe I travel around the world, and then, okay, then travel around the world, and basically, this basically not jumping from one thing to another, rather than really staying with it and just putting your intention into this one thing. So basically, then the opposite is basically you get nothing really done. It's just like you jump from one thing to another, sort of doing this a little bit and that a little bit, while the quality of citta would be this basic directedness, which stay with this one thing and really so from start to finish and master this one skill and develop it to perfection. And then the vimamsa, the investigation, reflecting, say, with regard to studies, for example, how am I learning, and is this effective for increasing my knowledge? Or how can I learn in a different way which is more effective? And whatever, if you have learned to, let's say, play a music instrument, what things I'm already good at and which aspects I'm not so good at, and how can I improve that. So basically looking at the actions and the results of your actions. And so with regard to the Dhamma practice, then it's a similar principle. And then looking at your actions in terms of, for example, meditation, then what mental actions are you doing? What are you thinking about? To what are you directing your minds? And then what is the result of that in terms of defilements that arise or good qualities? And also reflecting, is what I'm doing leading to my goal, or is it actually leading away from that goal? Like, for example, what you're doing with your life, say, is it in line with your Dhamma practice, or is it actually leading to another direction? Reflecting about that, or to what extent is what you're doing sort of in line with the Dhamma, or to what extent is it leading somewhere else? Then also the creativity in sense of how can you do something differently. Let's say if you notice you're actually going in the wrong direction, how can you do it differently so that you actually go in the direction of the Dhamma or to your goal? And so for example, with the breath, how can you stay with the breath or with the body, that the mind likes to settle down and that it sort of becomes peaceful? Or how can you, the Buddha talks about developing loving kindness. What is our effective way of that this mind state arises? What kinds of metta sentences work better for you, for example? Or what kind of, is it easier to start with yourself or with other people? Or you can notice maybe some details. We also we can reflect about one's own, say, meditation practice, just doing it mentally, but then also, for example, say writing something down sometimes can also help make it more clear. Excessive investigation can also lead to distraction. So you try out many things, this or that technique, or something like that. It can also be too much sometimes. So you have to basically pay attention to, is this more like distractive, or is this investigation actually leading to directing the mind into samadhi? I think these 4 qualities are good because just like this attitude of seeing the Dhamma practice and meditation like a skill. You can say like a skill that captures your interests and in terms of developing it. And it's often, for example, we sit down to meditate in a mechanical way, and instead asking yourself, where is this chanda? Where is this this motivation or this aspiration to practice? Or where's the virya, the effort or the energy that you put in, or the chitta, the putting your heart into it, and reminding yourself about these qualities. And so if one develops these qualities, then we can notice whether we developing these 4 qualities, basically we stay with this aim or this goal of following the instructions of the Buddha and reflecting, are we developing this direction or not? So basically it's also the larger picture of our life, that we can stay on track for practicing the Dhamma and following the instruction of the Buddha. yeah, so I hope useful thing to arouse your chanda, to your virya and your chitta and vimamsa, and then if the Dhamma practice will develop in the next year. Okay, we can continue with some meditation. Actions that we have done this year or in the past. Yeah, obviously the Buddha cannot forgive us anymore directly in this sense. They entered already final Nibbana, and the Dhamma is not a personal entity. So, yeah, but it is a very symbolic way of developing the attitude of forgiveness towards others and ourselves. So that basically this possibility that we can leave behind any resentments or bad feelings that we have about what we have done ourselves or what others have done to us. And the Buddha describes how we should relate to it if we have done something harmful, and then he says we should see wrong action as wrong action, recognizing it as unbeneficial, seeing it clearly, and then it is making amends in accordance with the Dhamma. Basically, we could say trying to repair any harm or damage that one has done as good as possible, and then also practicing restraint in the future. So, making an effort, being determined not to do it again, not to do something similar in the future. In this way, we can grow out and transcend this unwholesome karma and develop in a better direction. The attitude of forgiveness is beneficial for how we relate to ourselves and also how we relate to others. If we can forgive ourselves, then we don't harm ourselves with thoughts of remorse about past actions. And on the other hand, obviously other people are also acting just like we ourselves. Most other people also act based on desire, aversion and delusion, and so they sometimes do harmful things, and then having this attitude of forgiveness to them as well. Yeah, so it's also obviously useful to develop this attitude of forgiveness towards others, so that we don't suffer too long from our grudges or hurt feelings. And the Buddha gives this nice simile in the Sutta in the Uttara Nikaya, where it talks about three kinds of persons. One is like a line etched in stone, one is like a line etched in the ground, and one is like a line etched in water. So the first person, like the line etched in stone, a person gets often angry and the anger persists for a long time. So it's just like the line etched in stone, which takes a long time for water and wind to gradually dissolve. It just stays there for decades, something like that. And then the line etched in the ground, obviously if it's just the earth, normal earth, then after a while it disappears again. And then the best one is the line etched in water, that even the Buddha says that even if someone speaks rough or harshly in a disagreeable way, that the person remains friendly with that other person, so it just either disappears very quickly or doesn't even arise. And so one can see this attitude of forgiveness is important, because otherwise our aversion directed towards ourselves or to others, that remains etched in stone in our heart for a long time. And yeah, so we use this little chanting that we will do as opportunity to forgive ourselves for any harmful things that we have done, and not to determine not to do them again, and then to also to leave them behind, and to develop a life in a new direction, and basically not having to have remorse about them. And forgive other people who may have harmed us. In this way, we can start a new year with a mind that is peaceful and free from burdens, or free from burdens.